Welcome to the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Cox, and I've lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting 6 days a week, eating whatever I wanted at my meals, taking a cheat day every Sunday, and walking 6 miles a day. And I'm here to help you on your weight loss journey. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the power of routine on the weight loss journey. So I think this is an important thing to talk about because so much of our lives are kind of spent on autopilot. We are doing things and we're not even aware that we're doing them. And this can make for some really serious problems on the weight loss journey, or even, if you're just kind of debating about whether or not you want to lose weight. And this was something that really tripped me up in the beginning because I really thought, I don't understand why I'm overweight. I really felt like I don't understand this because I didn't feel like I was really eating more than other people around me. And it was only through a process of really starting to understand the habits I was in and the routines I was in that I started to see that there really were good reasons why I was overweight. And that's really the problem of being on autopilot, is that it's really difficult to be aware of these things. And then even when you're aware of them, these are deeply ingrained habits. And so then it's hard to change. But as you go along and you start to notice what routines you're in, and as you start to get into new routines, you can start to discover, the things that you're doing that are leading to either weight gain or not losing weight, at least. For me, a couple of the things that I was just completely unaware of, and it was only through the process of, doing intermittent fasting and getting into new routines that I discovered that I had been doing these things. But I had these habits and routines of like eating in front of the television, or just consistently overeating at each meal, just eating past the point of comfort, or stress eating. Just, I'm stressed out about this and now I'm going to go grab a snack. Like, these were things I was just unaware of. I just wasn't thinking about. And that's what's so tricky is, that you have to learn how to observe your own life and to realize you're in these habits and then to do something about them. But the good news is these routines, they are very, very powerful. And, when you're in a bad routine, then bad things will happen. But when you get into a good routine, or you change the things that you're doing in your routine to things that will actually help you lose weight, it's a very powerful thing because it makes everything so much easier. And the thing is, our brains want to be on autopilot. Like, we don't want to have to think about each thing we're doing. It would be quite overwhelming. If you think about it, if every morning you weren't in any kind of morning routine and you had to sit and consciously think about every single thing that you were going to do, it would just be overwhelming and exhausting. But we don't. We all have these routines that we're in. Maybe it's a very hectic routine. Maybe it feels very disorganized, but the odds are, you're doing pretty much the same thing over and over and over again. The good news is that no matter what kind of routine you're in right now, you can change it. You have the ability to, sit down and come up with a new routine. And in today's episode, that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about how to actually go through the process, some things to just be aware of. I'll talk about my daily routine with intermittent fasting and what it has looked like for me over these years. And I'll give you some tips, some things I've learned along the way that I think would make setting up a routine for the first time a lot easier. And I want to say at the very beginning, I kind of rebel at the idea of too much routine. So what I mean by that is I've tried in vain so many times to really set a schedule for myself. I understand that many people can function this way and that it works great for a lot of people to know exactly what time you're going to get up each morning and to have your day scheduled out to the nth degree. And I'm just not like that. I can't do that. I hope one day that I can do that, but I just don't. So when I'm talking about routines, I don't want you to get the idea that I mean every minute of your day is scheduled out. What I just mean is that you have these things that you do every day or almost every day. And that by doing these things and being in these habits, it sets you up for weight loss success. And it's a very individual thing, if you find that when you're setting up your routine, that, over time it's starting to feel like, oh, this is too rigid. And especially if you're resenting it, then that needs to change. You need to make it a little bit more flexible, a little bit looser. On the other hand, if you're feeling like, oh, I feel like I'm just kind of drifting, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing, then, add a little bit more structure to it. It's more art than science. And like I said before, you're probably, if you're like me, you're probably going to be unaware. If right now you're kind of in a situation where you just don't know why you're overweight, or you don't know why you're having a hard time losing weight. And so to try to make the routine something where you're getting rid of those things, well, you can't do that because you don't even know what you're doing. But what you can do is you can set up routines that make weight loss a lot more likely. And so that means that when you set up your routine, you're going to make a part of your routine the things that you are going to do in order to lose weight. For example, for me, that was things like, okay, I'm going to be practicing intermittent fasting Monday through Saturday. I'm going to be walking 6 miles a day. And putting that as part of your routine, these things that you're doing every day or almost every day, whatever you have set up for yourself, will make it so that these other things that you might be doing will start to become more obvious to you. And for me, learning how to do intermittent fasting, just starting to be consistent with that was the thing that made me realize oh, I'm in this terrible routine normally of stress eating, or, just over time learning that I was overeating a lot. Because, being consistent with intermittent fasting, being that in that routine, it made it so that I started to see oh, when I'm losing weight, it's because I'm eating less. And so that means I was eating more. And then when I, in hindsight would look at how much I used to eat, how often I used to eat, it was I was eating more food back then. So it was something that I don't know that I would have really understood that, except because I was in this routine of intermittent fasting. So when you're setting up your routine, I would encourage you to just go slow and be really gentle with yourself with any kind of routine that you set up. It's very easy, and I speak from experience here, to really want to go crazy with the routine, and to really overload yourself with things that you're going to do. Instead, I would just start out really easy and really pay attention to what you want your day to look like. What do you really want your day in, day out to look like? And then make your routine based on that. Don't worry about what you think other people might be impressed by or something like that. Just look to yourself and decide what's important to you. What do you want your days to look like? What will give you peace in your life? And build from there. And make sure when you're picking these things that what you're picking to do in your routine is lining up with the goals that you've set for yourself. For me, again, it was, I want to lose weight. And I also want to be eating all the foods my family eats. And I want to be more active than I am right now. And so that's what I did. I said, okay, well, that means intermittent fasting. That means eating whatever I want when I'm doing intermittent fasting. And this is the routine I'm in. And I'm going to be walking every day. And I when I looked at my life, and this continues to be true, what I saw for myself is, when I say I walk 6 miles a day, 14,000 steps on my Fitbit tracker, what that means is that's just, I'm going to be walking that much during that day. That does not mean that I say, okay, at 8 a.m. every day without fail, I'm, doing my 6 mile walk. That's not what that means. It just means over the course of the day, however I can fit it in, I'm going to get those 14,000 steps in on my Fitbit. And when you're trying to figure out, well, should that be a part of my routine? Is that a good goal? You can ask yourself, well, how would you feel if you did that every day? How would that actually look? And for me, the 6 mile thing. Now, for some people, that's going to be a terrible fit for their lives. And I do not just make a blanket recommendation that everybody should just walk 6 miles a day. But for me, when I looked at my life, I thought, yeah, I could do that. And I would actually feel good about that I've taken care of my body in that way, that I've kept it moving, And that's a challenge. But at the same time, I didn't feel it was like too much of a time commitment. I could do these things, around the house. I could, get my steps in ways where I would still have plenty of time for my family, plenty of time for all of my other obligations. But at the same time, I could do this and it would feel good. And for intermittent fasting, what I found for myself, it was much better to just keep it the same every day. And over the course of time, this has varied. In the beginning when I was doing intermittent fasting, I had more of like an eating window, starting out, let's say with a 16-8. And then eventually, it would get longer and longer. But I was always consistent. And I think this is helpful, to keep it that I was doing intermittent fasting, Monday through Saturday. I took Sundays off. But just keeping it at the same time every day was helpful. I didn't do a lot of like moving my windows around. And that was just helpful because I became very used to the idea of, okay, I'm eating every day between these hours. And even as I lengthened out my fasting window and shortened my eating window, I was still keeping it at around the same time each day. So, it was very gradual as I got down to one meal a day. But, it was not a big change whenever I would change the window, because it was like, okay, normally I would eat at 1. Okay, now I'm going to start my window at 2 because I'm trying to make my eating window shorter. So keeping as much routine as possible, even when you're changing the routine a little bit, is helpful, I've found. And I'm the type of person who I lose track of what day it is. So, and if you're like me, I would highly encourage you to try to figure out like something you can do every day, or maybe like 6 days a week, just so you always know what you're committed to doing. And you can just keep yourself on autopilot in that way. And it's important to commit. That's the whole point of being able to put yourself on autopilot, is that you're not having to think about these things. And if you're not really committed to what you've set out for your routine, you're going to be debating with yourself, like, well, do I want to do this or do I not? And I like to look at things like, doing the intermittent fasting, or, doing the 6 miles a day. Just, it's like, brushing my teeth or any other task that I'm doing to take care of myself. I don't debate with myself, like, should I get in there and brush my teeth, tonight, or should I just go to bed with dirty teeth? It's like, no, I brush my teeth because I don't want cavities. I want to have a healthy mouth. So it's kind of the same thing. If you're constantly trying to like ask yourself, do I want to do this? Then it's exhausting and it's going to be a lot harder to stick with. But if you just decide, and that's why it's important when you're figuring these things out, to really ask yourself, like, what's important to me and why am I doing this? And then decide, okay, I want to do this and this, and this is what I'm committed to. And it takes a lot less energy then to just stay in that routine, because you're not debating, you've decided and you're committed. Now, on the other hand, you do need to be willing to go back to the drawing board and change up your routine if it happens that your routine is just not working in your life. I mean, like I said before, a big mistake most of us make when we're coming up with a new routine is that we're overzealous. It's like we're doing things, we're putting things on our schedule that just is impossible to stick with. It's way too much that we're asking ourselves. We're just not there yet. And so instead, you need to realize that, like, okay, if I'm feeling resentful, then I need to go back to the drawing board, take some stuff out, make it easier, and then see if that works in my life. And, sometimes it's just that your life changes, like you have a new job or a new baby, or, name something. So many times life changes and it's not in our control. And then it's important to then realize, like, okay, my schedule needs to change. And so how's this new thing going to look? And again, it's a process. So don't ever let yourself get frustrated because, something comes up. Okay, something comes up. You can be flexible. You can figure this out. You just have to go back to the drawing board. So here's what my daily routine looks like when I'm in weight loss mode. It was just, I would get up, I would go to the bathroom, I would weigh myself. I would put that number into an app, and then I would sit down, read 4 chapters of the Bible. I would journal, I would pray, and then I would walk my 6 miles sometime during the day. And when I was doing OMAD, I would eat at around 6 o'clock. But again, there were days where I would eat at 5, or I would eat at 4, or I would eat at 7 or 8 or 9. It really just depended on what was going on in our lives. My miles, sometimes I walk them all first thing in the morning. I mean, like, as soon as I'm done praying, I get up, I do all of my 6 miles all in one big bulk thing. And other days I'll just get a few steps in the morning, and then a few more around lunchtime, and a few more in the afternoon, and then some in the evening. And as long as I have those 14,000 steps by the time I go to bed, that's all that matters, is that I'm getting my steps in. And then I take the day off on Sunday, both from my step goal and from fasting. And as far as what my daily routine looks like in maintenance mode, it's pretty much the same. I get up, I do all the same things. The only thing that has really changed at all is that as far as the fasting goes, sometimes I'm doing more of like a 2 meal a day thing. Sometimes it's 3 meals a day. I've experimented with various ways of eating just to kind of see, what do I prefer? I've found I prefer OMAD, but generally speaking, it's the same. There's just not that much difference between what I was doing when I was, trying to actively lose weight versus what I'm doing just to maintain. And the only other thing that's different in maintenance mode for me is that Sundays, I do fast in the mornings from coffee and from food because I go to church and we take communion. So that's the only difference now. I end up eating my first meal probably like around 11 or 12 on Sundays now, but I do take the rest of the day off as far as I just, I'll eat whatever I want, however much I want, whenever I want throughout the rest of the day on Sunday. And also because of that, on Saturday mornings, we do a pancake breakfast or a waffle breakfast. And my husband has always done like a special breakfast on the weekends. And it used to be on Sundays for us, but it's no longer since we're going to church. And that's my first tip, actually, is to be okay with your weight loss routine being boring. It's okay that it's just boring. I think that one thing is kind of a temptation is to try to make things exciting in the weight loss journey. But what I found is it's better to just let it be boring on the weight loss journey, but then add excitement to your life in other ways. Things like go travel or learn a new skill or read a book you've never read before. Let those things add excitement to your life, but let your morning routines and your weight loss routines just be boring. That way they're just easier to stick with. Now, when I say boring, I don't mean unenjoyable. I just mean not changing it all the time. I think it's very important to enjoy your plan, which is, the reason why I just say eat whatever you want, is because that is really enjoyable to me. Just eating the foods I like to eat, and walking, 6 miles a day is just a slow, peaceful walk 6 miles a day. And I really enjoy that. But it's very boring from the outside. I think most people would think, wow, that seems like super boring. And you're right. It's pretty boring, but it has given me my results, and it's also kept the weight off. And I feel so much more at peace about food and about my weight that it's totally worth it, I think. My next tip is to be patient with yourself. It's so hard to change your routines, to get into new habits, to kick old bad habits. It's really, really easy to fall back into those old routines. Sometimes it's just because you forget that, oh, I said I was going to do this thing, and now here I am, and I totally forgot. It's totally normal when you're trying to get into a new routine to have those times. And I would encourage you to think about, like, how long have you been in this current routine? Maybe it's been years. So give yourself lots and lots of, grace, whatever you want to call it, like just patience with yourself to implement this. And you're going to probably do it badly at first, but I think it was Zig Ziglar who said, anything worth doing well is worth doing badly at first, something like that. So, and remember that some days are just better than others. You're going to have some days where you're just spot on in your routine, and you're going to, like sometimes it'll be like the next day, and then you'll realize, oh, I totally forgot to do that thing yesterday. And in that moment, you can either choose to be really hard on yourself and to discourage yourself and to have negative self-talk, or you can just say, oh, well, I'll do better today. And I would highly encourage you to do the second way, because that's what I've found is really, truly the most effective when it comes to weight loss, is to quickly forgive yourself of mistakes and move on from them. So remember, routines are your friend. It's about, figuring out what can you just get into the habit of doing day in, day out. And when you are in a routine, you are then consistent with your plan. And when you're consistent with your plan, you're going to end up losing weight. And remember, routines don't have to be super strict. Like, it doesn't mean that you're scheduling yourself to the very last minute of every single day. It's just saying, okay, this is what I do every day. And there can be a lot of freedom and flexibility in that, in how you accomplish these things. But the main thing is really just deciding what are you committed to doing, and then go about the business of just making it your routine. So I hope you found this episode helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Do you want to lose the weight without getting rid of the foods you love and that you know you'll go back to eating again anyway? My book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, teaches you how to practice intermittent fasting so that you lose the weight sustainably and keep it off for good. You can get the audiobook read by me for free when you sign up for your 30-day trial of Audible. The link is in the show notes. And if you've gotten value from this podcast and you'd like to let other people know about it, it would be great if you could leave a review on either iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks.